Hi, everyone. This is Kathy Hopkins from the University of Maine Cooperative Extension here with you. You've heard from Brian about the reason why we're here today, and John Henderson and Todd Ludy about judging and standard grades and tools that we use and sources of error. And what I want to do now is talk a little bit about actual flavor judging. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a little PowerPoint and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's talk about flavor and grading. When people think about you making syrup, they often think that you walk around in plaid on snowshoes and carry buckets and make syrup that way. But in truth, syrup making has become highly technological these days, and that makes it easier for us to make more syrup and better quality syrup with a lot less work. And so the important thing about that is not that it's easy, it's still hard work, but the idea is that you can make more syrup, and you want to make sure that it's good flavored syrup. So we have standard grades. These were approved by the US and Canada and are used worldwide now, which John explained to us this morning. And these standard grades have characteristics. They have density requirements and color requirements and clarity requirements that we can measure with different kinds of tools. And so we can make sure that the syrup we produce falls within the proper specifications. So we use our tools to check the density, color, and clarity. We use our eyes basically for clarity. And then we come to flavor, and we have no digital tools that we can really use to decide what flavor is. So let's talk about flavor a little bit. Flavor is a mix of sensory data, and taste is not the same thing as flavor. We use those terms interchangeably, but they really aren't interchangeable. Taste is just one of the senses that contributes to flavor. If you remember, back in school, we all learned that there were 4 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. And we have those tastes still, but also we've added some tastes to that list as well. One of those tastes is umami, which is savory. And these are all tastes that are detected by your taste buds in your mouth. There are some other tastes that different folks are talking about adding to the list. Fatty as a flavor is one, and alkaline or water-like, metallic. These are other terms that are being added potentially to the list of tastes. 25% of the population are super tasters. They really have the ability to discriminate between different tastes really, really well. So 1/4 of you in the room today are probably super tasters. You may or may not know that. We're born with 10,000 taste receptors, and when we get older, we have about half that amount. Part of the reason for that is because as we get older, we may develop different issues. We start taking different medications. We develop sinus issues or allergies. People who take up smoking and drinking tend to lose some of their taste buds because of those practices. So we get more experience as we get older, but the number of taste receptors that we have seems to go down with time. So it's a good thing that we have experience. The human sensory system can distinguish about 100,000 different flavors or combinations of tastes. And this is important because according to a 2017 Food and Health survey, which was done on Americans, but I think this probably applies to consumers everywhere. 84% of Americans confirmed that taste was a top driver of their food purchases. So it's really important that we get the flavor of maple syrup correct before we put it on retail sale. Everybody's an individual and they vary. We all vary in our ability to discern different tastes or flavors depending on our sensory systems. And of course, flavor is a personal issue as well. Tasting is often called the 4 doors of perception. And part of that is that we think that we taste with our tongues and our mouth, but actually only 20% of our perception comes from our tongue and our mouth, and the rest of it comes from our other senses. So we taste with our eyes, our ears, and our nose, and that's where 80% of our sense of taste comes from. So there's an important study that was done by a psychologist at Oxford University. He decided to test some of these other senses, and he served oysters to people and played sounds of the seashore. And then he served some oysters to people and played the sound of cows mooing. And people rated the flavor of the oysters in both these situations. And these people who tasted the oysters said that, gosh, those oysters, those first oysters that you served us with the sound of the sea in the background, they tasted so much better. And so you may not think that your sense of taste is affected by your other senses, but apparently it is. So that's important to keep in mind. The mouth feel of a food also is important. The crunch that it has, if it's supposed to be crunchy, the fat content, all of these things affect your sense of taste, as well as smelling it. All of these things combine to give you a sense of what the taste is. Flavor is a unique characteristic of syrup, and nothing is quite the same as real maple flavor, but that flavor can be affected by the soil type, the weather, the season, tree health, your processing methods, unanticipated things that happen during a season. All of these things can give you a specific flavor in a given year. And flavor is a personal preference for you and for consumers. So when you taste syrup, what you want to do is first get a little sample and smell it. See what it smells like. Does it smell like maple? Does it smell like I don't know, something else that maybe you don't want to take a big taste of? So smell it first, look at it, see what it looks like. Do you see anything in the syrup? Does it remind you of anything? Is the color appropriate for the class? Then take a sip, a small taste, and let it roll around the surface of your tongue. Part of what you're doing is trying to get that syrup onto all your different taste buds, but also you want a sense of the mouth feel of it. Does it roll around on your tongue? Is it watery? Does it cling to your tongue? All of these things give you a sense of the quality of the syrup. And then evaluate it, talk about it. What is the quality? What's the balance? Is the flavor appropriate to the class? Is it light and delicate like it should be in golden delicate? Is it more robust as it would be in amber, and even more robust as you move down the color grades? So taste with somebody and try and discuss, how does this syrup that we're tasting match the standard for that flavor class? Is it appropriate? Is the depth of flavor appropriate to the color class? Compare to other syrups you've tasted, and talk about it with other people. It's amazing how much you can talk about the flavor of syrup when you get together with other people who have tasted a lot of syrup, and enjoy the differences. All syrups are different, every season is different, and yet all of the syrups are good. We do have a couple tools that help with talking about flavor. Senator Acer came up with the flavor wheel a number of years ago now, but they divided standard flavors into flavor families. So sometimes the syrup has more of a vanilla flavor. Sometimes it's more of a confectionery kind of flavor. Sometimes it might be a milkier flavor, a buttery sort of flavor. They divided all these differences that you can get in any given year into these flavor families and tried to describe them with words. So this is a good tool to use to talk about the differences in flavor. The University of Vermont came up with something they call the Map of Maple. It's a similar tool. It also divides the flavors of maple into families. The maple leaf family, some of these families are the same as the flavor wheel from Senator Acer. Sometimes there's a spicy flavor to syrup, sometimes a fruity flavor or a honey-like flavor. And so all of these flavors can range from very light to pretty pronounced, but these are all good flavors. And so these are good tools to use when you're judging and you're trying to describe what the different flavors are, or trying to pick a favorite syrup out of a number of entries that are all good. So these are tools. They're still subjective tools, but they're helpful tools. One thing to remember is that sometimes maple syrup can have off flavors. And part of that is because maple syrup picks up flavors very easily from other substances. So you want to be very careful when you're producing syrup that you're not exposing it to anything that could give it an off flavor. Off flavors can occur anywhere from the tree, from Mother Nature doing something in the tree, to something that happens in the course of production that particular year. So it's important to be aware of these. Here are some of the common off flavors. We don't see a lot of these anymore. I don't think people use chlorine for cleaning much anymore because of the risk of adding an off flavor. But anything that you use in your production practices can potentially give an off flavor to the syrup. So you want to be careful, make your syrup quickly from the sap, boil it as fast as you can, don't expose it to anything that might give it a flavor that isn't the best. When we talk about flavors, it's also important to talk about allergens. Allergens can sometimes, for some people, give sort of an off flavor to syrup. Even if it doesn't lend an off flavor to the syrup, allergens can be life-threatening for some people. So it's important to be aware of them. And we can talk more about those at some other point in time, but it's important to know that the US has 8 allergens on its list. Canada has 11 on its list, and the European Union, if you are shipping syrup to the European Union, you need to be aware that there are 14 allergens on their list. So you can go to any of these websites and find out more about the allergens Just know that they exist for now. So to become really good at tasting and discriminating between flavors of maple syrup, you need to train your palate. For the 25% of people who are super tasters, that training period isn't going to take very long. For the rest of us, you may need to spend more time tasting different syrups and talking about them as often as you possibly can to really train your palate to distinguish between the differences in different syrups. We're genetically programmed to like sweets because they provide quick energy, so we can escape lions, tigers, and bears, and so on. So basically, we are all going to like the syrup that we taste because it is sweet. You need to concentrate, though, to discriminate amongst the range of flavors. Yes, it's sweet, but there might be undertones in the flavor that also you can taste if you take your time and taste carefully and practice with others. And talk about them, discuss that range of flavors, discuss those undertones that might be in a syrup in any given year, and whether you like it or not. Sometimes you may like it, sometimes you may not like it as much. But practice with other people, talk about it, and if you have the opportunity to judge a contest, I really recommend that you judge it. It's a great thing to do. There is no substitute for the experience of going down a whole line of syrups and tasting them. And they may all be good, and yet they'll all be different. And the only way to really learn to appreciate those is to taste other syrups than the syrup that you make. So judge a contest if you get a chance. Anytime that you have a meeting, an association meeting or a regional meeting or something, everybody should bring some syrup and just do a blind tasting of the syrup, just to train your palate, just to practice, just to talk about and experience what those different flavor families might be. So do that. And the better you become at discriminating amongst the different flavors, the better the industry, the better off the industry is. If consumers get a bad syrup and don't like what they've tasted that they paid money for, they will turn back to Aunt Jemima or some other sweetener that's a competitor, basically. This is a waste of marketing money by everybody who spends any money on marketing, anyone, whether it's your personal marketing money or your association's marketing money or the North American or International Maple Syrup Institute's marketing money. All of that money is lost when somebody buys a syrup that they don't like, that isn't really very good. And unfortunately, there is some syrup out there on retail sale that sometimes isn't very good. So we also don't want people who taste something that they don't like. And there's a difference between tasting something that they just didn't like because they like Aunt Jemima better, and something that really was not a high quality syrup that didn't deserve to be on the shelf. People will talk about that. People aren't shy about complaining on social media these days. So it's the goal, it should be the goal of the entire industry to achieve 100% consistent quality in taste. All syrup should taste good, and it can all be different, but it should all be good. And wherever you find it for sale, it should be good tasting syrup. This is critical so that we're not wasting marketing money, so that we're building the brand, so that we're growing sales and acquiring new consumers. We really want to have that happening. So I love this little cartoon. This is what people who have never made syrup think, that this is how syrup is made. You just go tap a tree and presto, it comes right out as syrup. They don't understand that there's a process, that there is some hard work involved, and that producers are invested in making that hard work happen and make that good product at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to talk about issues amongst yourselves in your class there. Talk with your class leader, and enjoy having your grading exercise this afternoon. It will be a lot of fun, and you'll be surprised at how interesting you find it. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share and say goodbye to you now, and hope that you have a good afternoon, and we'll talk again some other day. Bye now.